Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop Podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as they will on all of our episodes are my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And my brother Mike O'Connor.
What is up?
And it has been a while since we've last spoken. It's been about a month. We left off right before the playoffs started, and my God, so much has happened. From the play-in game with the Blazers to 2 rounds of the playoffs, 4 Game 7s, a Mike Breen double bang, Steve Javie agreeing to every call on the floor, the Nets hiring a new head coach, several head coaches getting fired. It's honestly, I don't even know where to start. There's so much that happened, and it's all led us here to 2 awesome conference finals games, the Celtics and the Heat in the East, and the Nuggets and the Lakers in the West. I do want to talk a lot about those because they're super interesting, but I think, we owe everyone here and ourselves really the opportunity to talk about everything that has transpired because, there have been some incredible happenings in the NBA. Luke, I can see you nodding along right now. You know exactly where I'm going with this. First and foremost, the Clippers. We are not getting Battle LA. They absolutely choked a 3-1 lead against the Nuggets in the second round of the playoffs. Luke, I want you to start here. What are your takeaways from that series?
The whole time I was saying Clippers in 6.
I kept watching them thinking that, every time they're up big. I'm like, okay, the Clippers are going to take over. They're going to put the nail in the coffin. And they just didn't. They blew huge leads in games 5, 6, and 7. I
kind of wish I had counted the number of times I texted you guys Clips in 6. Because I think I sent it 100 times maybe.
But it's so true because I've never been rooting for the Nuggets as hard as I was rooting for the Nuggets in this series. And I was not kidding. My fun fact is the Nuggets were down 19 or double digits before I'd go to bed. And I would just turn the game off and wake up the next day because I knew I would wake up to a Nuggets win. It was insane.
If you want the Lakers to win, you got to stay up tonight.
That's true.
We're recording for the record. We're recording this Friday night before the Western Conference Finals game. So yeah, Michael, you might want to stay up for that one if you want LeBron to get to his 4th ring
for sure.
But yeah, I think the Clippers. Luke, you were about to talk.
So just like the way the Clippers went out is so pathetic. It's not pathetic. It's like bittersweet because I want Battle LA. I want there to be this amazing series in the Western Conference Finals. Everybody kind of wanted it. A LeBron Kawhi matchup. But I'm a Nuggets fan. I like the Nuggets. I root for Jokic. I root for Murray. But the whole time I was like, it's going to be the Clippers. It's going to be the Clippers. And then the Nuggets won, so I'm happy. And it's great. But also it's a heartbreaking team. Like I said earlier in the year, it's like every time I watch this team, they're down at half, and then they come back and win. Nothing. This is their identity. This is who they are. They're the underdogs, and they always make it out. It's the most I swear to God that I'm having heart attacks watching the Denver Nuggets sometimes. But
so yeah, they and we'll get to them in a little bit when we look at the Western Conference Finals. But yeah, they came back from 3-1 down in 2 consecutive series. The first time that's ever been done in NBA history in the playoffs to do that. The run they're on is pretty remarkable, especially when you consider their opponents. Obviously, the Jazz, not so much, but the Clippers, everyone went into the season saying that they were a favorite. This whole time, all these projections are indicating that they were the favorite to win the championship this year. And then, truly, watching the second half of Game 7, when Kawhi and Paul George combined for, 5 points in the second half? 0 in the fourth quarter? Abysmal. It was, honestly, the only thing I keep saying it was pathetic. They rolled over and died. Doc Rivers, a great coach, he has blown a 3-1 lead every
4 times
of coaching. Yep. He is, he's the 3-1 king, I guess. I don't know. But, I don't know what else they could have done other than had better chemistry because it was apparent. They just were not clicking. I think Harrell and Lou Williams, each in their own right, looked terrible defensively. And the Nuggets were just attacking them whenever they were on the floor. And, as much you can kind of pick apart every individual player on this team, and it's no one showed up in these. They went up 3-1 and they just coasted. They thought they had it, and anytime they went up, they just didn't put it away. It was maddening to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought definitely the lack of chemistry was revealing. It was that way the whole season, and I think a reason. And I feel like we try to be an unbiased podcast because we just like basketball so much, but I felt like the Clippers went through the whole season with the fact that they got Kawhi and Paul George to come, that the people from last season were walking around like they had already – it felt like the Clippers were walking around like they had already accomplished something and that they were the best team in LA, better than LeBron. And I was just like, this isn't true. Like, none of these people have, besides Kawhi, have proven anything.
And I think that's evidenced by the Twitter frenzy after they blew the 3-1 lead, led in part by
everybody. Oh, the Trailblazers had a field day on them.
Dame and CJ went off. And it's not just them. Everyone was going off on the Clippers, but players around the league were thrilled to see this team lose. And I think it speaks to that because they did. They had a chip on their shoulder for no real reason. And now they have to do a lot of soul searching because I don't think they blow it up. I think they're going to come back and try and win again next year. But Kawhi can walk after next year. And if he does,
wasn't the point that they had 2 years together, right? Kind of like they had 2 years to figure it out.
I think it was also like they had 2 years, but they'll probably re-up and go. If it absolutely capsizes, if they aren't able to right the ship, why wouldn't Kawhi go leave in 2021 in the loaded free agent class and maybe try and find another situation out somewhere?
I expect a lot from Kawhi. And
yes,
I don't know how much Kawhi really comes out and says it or talks about it, but he kind of gives me the sense that he wants to be considered as a top 5 player in the league. He wants to be in the conversation with LeBron and Giannis and I guess Luka Doncic going forward. But like if you're going to come back and be the same player every year, you can't be considered a top 5 guy. LeBron's 35, and every time he comes back every year, and something's better about his game. He always improves himself. So if Kawhi wants to be one of those guys, I need to see Kawhi do something next year that you just say like, wow, like this guy's really taking it to another level. He's really not kidding around. So
yeah, and I mean, I think him not scoring in the fourth quarter of that game it's damning to his resume. As he carried the Raptors, he won the Spurs with like it's very different. I think one thing I said to you guys was this is the most pressure he's had on him individually to go win. Like as much as him on the Raptors, it was like, oh, this could be a fun thing. They could go win, but there was always like, oh, the Warriors with Kevin Durant, like that was always facing them at the end of the road. And I think everyone expected them to win. And they kind of not fell into it. They earned it, but it was never like, oh, it's championship or bust for them. And I think now it was for this Clippers team, and they did not live up to it. Whereas, you can look at whether it's the Lakers or, even the way the Celtics and the Heat are playing, it's like they wanted it more than this Clippers team clearly did. But I don't think it's exclusively fair to look at the Clippers' shortcomings because they're not the only favorite that kind of crumbled in the second round. If you look at the Eastern Conference, the top 2 seeds in the Bucks and the Raptors both lost. Granted, the Raptors lost in 7 games, but both of them went down. One of them more predictably than the other. I just think that I don't know if it's the bubble or what. Why are these promising title favorites going down so early?
Well, the Raptors are like
say it, Luke.
The difference between the Celtics and the Raptors is nothing. They're the same type of team, great coaching, great talent. You didn't really expect the Raptors to be much better than the Celtics. In fact, I think most people actually predicted the Celtics to move on past the Raptors.
I didn't. I would have figured, they've been there before. They've kind of accomplished all that. I thought Siakam was going to take this big step. They looked good in the first round. I thought they weren't going to do what they did. Honestly, it went 7 games. Realistically, without an OG Anunoby shot, that could have been a much shorter series. Mm-hmm. I look at how poorly Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Marc Gasol, like all these guys played in this series, and it was shocking because they really did not look like that all season. They didn't look like that in the restart. I just thought it was crazy, and it's no knock on the Celtics. They're good in their own right, but I didn't really think I thought it would have been Raptors in 6.
No, see, I tend to agree with Luke that I thought the 2 and the 3 here could have been interchangeable. These two teams were almost the same. I mean, you could argue the Raptors are a more complete team just in terms of like the personnel on hand. Mm-hmm. But I thought the Celtics would win, and I think that has something to do with the fact that it's harsh on Siakam, and yeah, he got second team All-NBA, but I don't think he can. As of right now, as far as what I've seen, I don't think he's the go-to guy on that team, which is insane. the go-to guys on the team during that series were Kyle Lowry and Van Vliet, which can't be the case. Like you need your star guy. You need your star guy to not only have a back to the rim turnaround as his move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was clear Siakam needs to work on his ball handling. Yeah. I mean, he has a few moves and they're predictable. And I think the Celtics fell right through it. They also do have a pretty good lineup to handle him, because while he does play the 4, he's not necessarily a traditional 4 that's like stronger and bulkier. He is more of a new era power forward that I think a Tatum can guard. You could, if in a pinch, you could put Tice on him. You can make switches. A Marcus Smart can guard him. Like, they can be a little more versatile there. And I just think it didn't match up properly. And, props to the Celtics for exploiting that and advancing the next round.
I never thought that the Raptors would have beat the Celtics. And I'm looking at the scores right now. Game 1 was a 18-point Boston win. Then the Boston wins Game 2 by 3. Raptors win Game 3 by 1.
That's the Anunoby shot, too. That's the game winner in double overtime.
Toronto Raptors win Game 5 by 7. Or Game 4 by 7. Game 5 was a Celtics big win, 22 points. And then a double overtime for Game 6. Raptors won by 3. And then a 5-point Celtics win. All the games were close, except when Boston won by a lot.
Right.
So Toronto's a great team, and they could compete with a lot of teams in a 7-game series. But I don't think they have the star power. Like you said, Siakam needed to take this big step. I didn't think Siakam was going to take that step. I think he's a great player. I don't know if he's a number 1 option superstar. I kind of want to. You need like a score-heavy, score-first guard on that team. I would love to see like a Karis LeVert on that team or something like that.
I think it's worth noting he's only 25. Like, I think he can still develop these elements to his game. Like, is he going to be this prolific all-time great? Probably not. But can he be your second or third star that goes and wins the championship? Yeah, he did it last year.
100%.
So I do think that the potential is there, and that's why I probably had the higher expectations than either of you did. But I do think, even the way we're having this conversation about that series, it's a kind of an excusable loss looking at who they played and the way they played them. Looking at the Bucks loss isn't to me. The Bucks loss is not, it's inexcusable to me. Them and the Clippers were the finals favorites, and they lost in the second.
I read an article about it, and it's because the Bucks match up terribly with the Heat scheme-wise. The Bucks want to try to protect the paint, and they let teams just jack threes up all day and say you're not going to beat us on the three-point line. And the Bucks are a great three-point shooting team. They got guys like George Hill, Chris Middleton, and Giannis creates all this space for them. They have DiVincenzo and Connaughton. They have a lot of shooters. Korver, yeah. So, I mean, the Bucks were just kind of hoping they didn't face a team with a bunch of elite shooters, and that's what the Heat is. Like, they have Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and Kelly Olynyk and Jay Crowder, and they have 4 guys. They have 4 guys shooting 40% from 3, and the Bucks let them shoot threes. Why would you ever do that, right? And that's why they got crushed like that, because they literally let the best 3-point shooting team shoot threes.
And are you ready for this? This is just what I think about what I watched. Well, Jimmy Butler, because I know we're going to talk about the conference finals later, and I'm pumped about that because I'm high on Jimmy Butler. But I think the Bucks, besides Giannis, are worse than the Celtics, the Raptors. Celtics and the Raptors. I think their team is bad.
Yeah,
their team is not good.
If you strip Giannis from that team, and maybe it is to his credit why he is now a back-to-back MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, like, he does amplify that team dramatically. But when you smother him like these teams have in this playoff, it's very apparent that Chris Middleton's not going to. I mean, he did, granted, when they won a game.
Win one.
Yeah, and a lot of that was Middleton. But again, he won you one, but then that's it. Like, it's not.
That was the elimination game, and I think it's hard to beat a team facing elimination. I think.
Yeah, it is. But in that game, Giannis did get hurt. Then Giannis didn't play the following game where they lost and got eliminated. But
people have been making this comparison to the dynasty Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, that Shaq's skill set is kind of like Giannis's, where he can take over games. He's dominant the whole time, but he was never the shooter. He wasn't the down the stretch we need this huge bucket, like contact to the lane type of thing. And if they understand and Giannis understands that that's who he is, it doesn't mean he's not the best player in the league, but they need that other shot creator and play creator like a Kobe. And they're expecting Middleton. They're expecting Middleton to be that, and that's not the case at all.
Again, his $178 million contract is one of the worst contracts in the league, in my opinion.
He can be a third option. Like, he can absolutely be part of a triple header.
Are you giving your third option the max?
No, obviously in an ideal world, not. But like, you still could, and like he could conceivably be your Bosh on your Miami.
I would have liked to see what would have happened if they kept Brogdon. I think if they were able to put Brogdon on the floor instead of Bledsoe, some things might have been different.
I mean, I think it just stinks. It's a small market. They can't pay the luxury tax, even though it sounds like Giannis just met with their ownership, and they claim that they will to try and make him happy. Giannis is going to leave. He's unhappy. It's pretty apparent if they are unable to truly win the championship next year. Like, I don't see him staying. Maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt it, because I do. I think this exit just showed that what the Bucks as an organization are able to do financially to surround him with pieces that are capable of winning a championship. While this Bucks team, like, yeah, Brook Lopez, very good in his own right, probably was a good fit around Giannis. Strip Giannis from what he does, and Brook Lopez fades.
It's nothing. Yeah.
He fades. Like, he was kind of doing catch and shoot threes, and every once in a while he'd go and do something inside like he used to do when he was a net. But it's not enough.
I think Giannis just needs, I'm repeating what I said, but I think they just need a big two. You can get a functional team around an actual big two, not the Middleton Giannis big two.
But I think it's looking at what the Lakers are doing right now. I mean, I think he can be the Anthony Davis to a LeBron.
For sure.
Like, I think
it would be insane if he went to Miami. I think a Jimmy Butler Giannis combo would be crazy. But then kind of like, how do you fit Bam in there? So Right. No, I do. I think, I don't know. I think that there are a lot of questions now in this offseason for this Bucks team to see how you can try and convince him with this last year to stay. What pieces can you move around? What can you surround him with that's going to be convincing that, hey,
I'm gonna be
Milwaukee's
wrong.
The place to win?
And I'm going to be wrong about this because I was wrong about putting Paul George in my top 10. After playoff P, I was wrong.
Pandemic P, baby, let's go.
At least you admit it.
I'll just continue with my probably wrong when we play this back, but if I were Middleton, I wouldn't get too comfortable. I think that there could be a trade there.
Contract is so expensive. I don't know what team would want to take that on.
But he's also good, and you're going to get him for a couple years. So, like,
I saw some Chris Paul rumors, but apparently they backtracked.
Chris Middleton for Bradley Beal.
Would you do that if you're Washington? No,
and
I wouldn't.
And I won't get down the rabbit hole with trades. A similar team that you could kind of get down the rabbit hole with, but just shocking to me was a sweep of the Sixers. I thought we're in the Eastern Conference. I figured,
might as well look on them. Yeah, and this is the same boat.
Embiid is not happy.
In our last episode, I talked about how I could see them advancing. Like, I would not be shocked if they made it to the conference finals. If they just got hot, they shortened their rotation. And you know what? I'm eating my words. I've been getting fun of that like the entire time. I gotta say, Embiid fizzled. He just did not do what he needed to do. No one, the way he was going up and down the court, his body language was toxic to everyone around him.
He does not want to be there.
No. And again, I'll give the Celtics credit again. They did that to that Sixers team. Like, they really took it to them, swept them. But I think, there's a reason Brett Brown just got fired, and I don't think that's the last of it. I think that there's going to be a lot that happens with this team before the end of next season.
They have to move some. I don't care who it is. At this point, it's it kind of has to be Embiid. At least Simmons hasn't shown some type of
attitude issue.
Right. So you kind of get rid of Embiid. You try and build something with Harris, Simmons, and Horford. Grab some shooting in a trade with Embiid. But, I mean, they really don't have anywhere to go. They kind of have to deal with what they have and make the best of it. They have a lot of player assets, but...
the situations are different between, obviously, the Clippers, but the energy thing, when it was hard to watch the Sixers Celtics series, not just because it was a sweep, but the energy of the people. It was just a strange thing to watch, and it just contributes to, even though the free agency class isn't amazing, this offseason is going to be one of the more interesting ones, and I think a lot of teams are going to look so different. And a lot of teams are in I just feel like big trouble unless they turn some things around, like Houston. I'm kind of swinging this around, but
I mean, I think there's something to be said, and like I think that looking at the way some of these series went, like the Sixers, they didn't have Simmons, so maybe they don't get swept, but I think they still lose in the first round there, even with him. And I do think that raises some eyebrows, and so maybe the rumors are Tyler was probably gonna be their head coach. Who really knows who comes in?
I saw a Lou Williams trade rumor on Twitter today.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have to try and figure something out. But I would imagine that you have to move some pieces there, or else you're gonna be stuck. Like I really do believe that. Especially, no one is gonna take on that Horford contract. Tobias Harris's contract is not team friendly either. You'd have a better chance of moving him if you wanted to. But I just generally think that this team they're in financial no man's land. They're in trouble. It's got to be Embiid, unfortunately. And going back, I've always said that he's the one you should keep. But right now, all signs point to trading Embiid.
And it doesn't have to do with like a team or a scheme fit or anything like that. I think it has to do with the fact that he just doesn't want to be there anymore. You can't keep that in your locker room. It's not good for it.
No, you're right. It's not.
Right. And
so looking at the difference between having an attitude fit issue versus a personnel fit issue, Michael, like you said, let's look at the Rockets, who just lost 4-1 to the Lakers after kind of punching them in the nose and winning the first game of that series. What are our takeaways from the small ball experiment in the playoffs, other than Daniel House needing a little more control in the bubble and not necessarily breaking
He probably wouldn't want him that game 5 too. Daniel House is such a great player.
But I do think it alters your rotations. You probably play Jeff Green less minutes, maybe. I don't know. They were gonna win anyway, but still,
there are some very negative takeaways from the Rockets.
Totally. Yeah.
Westbrook
it's sad.
Is a disaster. Yeah,
Westbrook is not good.
He's not. And look. He had COVID. He did not play in any of the 8 seeding games or the beginning of the Thunder series. He had that hamstring injury, which does nag players, and especially someone who is so explosive and rely on that. Maybe it was rust. Maybe there's a legitimate chance that he just truly was not himself there, which people have said being in that bubble was not a friendly environment for the players. Paul George said that he had mental health issues, was not himself. Other players said all these things. Not that it's mental health for Russell Westbrook, but I do think that there's something to be said about being stuck there, and maybe you're not you. Maybe it was just this wasn't the year. You re-up and you try again, and maybe it works. But I don't think
that's the situation. And all these mental health issues the players talked about and how it's so player unfriendly, they all just miss their silos. They're all like, "Oh man, I have to hang out with me and the boys. It's so hard." Where my hoes at? And so
that's easy for you to say, Luke. You weren't in the bubble without all your side hoes.
Yeah, no, me and all the ladies out here in Seattle, dog, I kill it. So
yep.
Microsoft.
Yeah. So Westbrook. Obviously, Russ has to do a lot of things. Like you said, he deal with the hamstring injuries. I talked a lot about being in shape for the games. I think it's really hard. Playing a 48-minute basketball game on an NBA level is challenging physically, just getting up and down the court, grabbing rebounds, things like that. And that's what Westbrook did for them, right? He was all about hustle. And the fact that he wasn't in shape to give it 110% literally all the time he can probably did play a little bit of a factor in it. But it doesn't change the fact that he's a terrible shooter. And where do you put him on the floor?
It's intense. It's intense because could you imagine going from his MVP season to not even a Laker guarding him on the floor?
No one. That's what they were doing. They were like, "There's other people we should be guarding."
His defender was in the paint while he's on the 3. It's
so
insane.
Here's the thing, and the Rockets, as constructed, did not work, and it's largely in part due to Russell Westbrook. I think small ball could work if you had a point guard who could shoot, and Harden was allowed to actually penetrate without having 3 defenders collapse on him in the paint. I think the way they tried to do this. Like, I think, say the Chris Paul trade never happens, and you try and do this exact same small ball experiment, just sub in Chris Paul for, and I know Harden and Chris Paul don't like each other, whatever. Like, having a guard who can shoot and also facilitate, get into the paint, kick out, similar to Westbrook, just literally able to shoot, I think makes a world of difference.
I think they need like a wing who can dribble and play make a little bit. I think bringing in another guard-like player on the starting lineup for them would be wrong. I think they should be reserving guys like Austin Rivers off the bench to replace Harden. When Harden needs to come off the floor for the 8 minutes he's getting rest, you should put in your one backup guard. Everybody else on that team should just be guys who are like 6'4" to 6'8", who can all dribble and shoot, and then maybe you have a center. Andre Drummond's a free agent, and in my opinion, I think he should be their biggest target. And that's because I think it would be better if they had a center. Like, think about, like, Westbrook's 6'4", you can't put him in a dunker spot. But if you have Drummond out there, at least you can move him into the dunker spot, and then, yeah, you get 3 defenders collapsing on James Harden, he could throw a lob or something like that, or he kicks out. It gives you more options.
What's evident is that you're saying small ball is dead, because by bringing in Drummond, who literally is one of the worst shooters.
Small ball is something you have to build up from the ground up. I don't think it's something you can do where it's like, I'll just pull together a whole bunch of vet minimums and hope it works out.
Well, I
really,
think
like, if you want to play
I
small ball, you really need to build.
I don't think they built this roster correctly for small ball to thrive. I think that small ball can
also
thrive.
think small ball did thrive. You can reject this if you want. The Hamptons 5 was small ball. I know Durant is 7 feet, but he is not a big man. That's small ball, so it already thrived. But that, like Luke said, you can't just mid-season dump your big men and say, like, we're trying this. It was just never going to work, especially if, like, PJ Tucker, he's amazing. He's awesome. He can't be your third most dynamic guy, maybe fourth most with Eric Gordon. Like, it just wasn't going to work.
He's that guy. Yeah, like, I kind of feel the same way a little bit about Siakam, but less, like, I'd put more offensively on Siakam than I would Tucker. It's kind of like he's just kind of there to play defense, and when he does get his open corner 3, he should shoot it.
Yeah.
But PJ Tucker shouldn't be doing anything else other than guarding everybody and shooting corner 3s. With that being said, you need other ball handlers who can play off the ball. You're going to put the ball in Harden's hand. All you really need is just guys who can catch, pump fake, and then, like, take a drive and make a good decision. Daniel House played so well, and that's all he was doing. It was like Harden would kick it to him in the corner. He would try and make his defender miss, and then he just continued to move the ball and try and get a good shot. So it works, but it's something you have to put a year or 2 years investment into. It's not something you can just pick up and be ready for.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I think the Rockets should – I don't think they're going to do anything major. I have a feeling that we'll see both Russ and Harden on the team again.
100%. I don't think Russ's contract can get moved.
No. And I don't know if James Harden is just saying this for the sake of getting the media away from him, but he was like, I think we are truly one piece away. And if he means that, then I think the Rockets will make something work.
I mean, it could. If you really think about it, like, if they just have a more dynamic scorer out there with Harden instead of Westbrook, like, it could make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting. I do think we've spent enough time now looking at some playoff shortcomings. Let's transition here and start looking at what's to come, what's kind of already happened. Let's start with the Eastern Conference Final, the Celtics, the Heat. They've already played 2 games. As I said, we're recording this on Friday afternoon. The Heat have a 2-0 lead. Granted, one of them was an overtime win that was truly down to the wire.
Same block.
Yeah, an unbelievable Bam block. And the second game, the Celtics had a big lead, blew it in the second half because the Heat broke out some zone, and they just kind of fell apart. What do you think of these first 2 games, and where do you think the remaining 2 to 5 go?
Mike, you want to start with that?
I think the Heat will win the series in 5, and I think they're going to lose tomorrow, and then they're going to win the next 2. Is what I think is going to happen. I think the Heat, it's so bizarre to say this, but I think even though they were the 5 seed, they're peaking at the right time, and they are tailor-made for matchups against every team they've played in the playoffs. I find. I just think almost at every position they're able to handle whoever they're guarding, and another masterful thing that they're doing is the zone against the Celtics. The Celtics lost when they went to zone yesterday. They're well coached. They just have really athletic, young, hungry people with this weird combo of veterans. I feel like it's not going to be talked about a lot, but it should. How monumental that Memphis trade was to bring Iguodala and Jay Crowder there. You would never think. Jay Crowder's been moving around and honestly has been ass in some places he's gone.
In Cleveland with LeBron.
He was terrible. But it's just crazy. They're all clicking. And then Jimmy Butler I'm going to call him quote unquote star. I saw a tweet that said he's acting like a closer in baseball. Like he comes in to just finish the game.
Awesome. He scored 14 points last game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He only had 14.
But he had those huge points down the stretch. It's just nuts. And He gets to the rim.
He's just a bulldog. Yeah. I mean, he is so hungry for this. He is just a ball of energy defensively, and I think everyone feeds off of it. I think even players look at what Goran Dragic is doing. Like, he is, not that his career was dead, but he's absolutely giving himself more national headway, and I think he'll get himself another contract because he's a free agent after this year, if I'm correct.
I mean, he's been unbelievable. He was good when he played for Phoenix, I don't know, a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. He was really good there. He's averaging 16, 18 points a game, and I think it was 5 or 6 assists. So he's not a bad player. He's never been a bad player. But the fact that he's playing at an all-time great in his career right now is huge for the Rockets.
Insane, yeah.
For the Heat.
For the Heat.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying Rockets.
It's because you're just so fixated on the...
I'm still thinking about small ball. I'm like, why don't you just get a center?
No, I think that this series, every game is going to come down to the last minute. I really do think these teams are very equal. And I think that at some point, some Celtics are going to make some shots. And it sounds like, and now I'm not expecting him to do much in this series because he's been out for a month. They're going to get Gordon Hayward back probably for game 3. And then from there, it helps your depth a little bit more. You probably don't need Grant Williams coming in as much as he has been. I think they can make some adjustments that will make a difference defensively against the Heat that could benefit them. I think Hayward is a better perimeter defender that you can throw in there, that I just think that it's small adjustments that when it comes down to that last minute, the Celtics are going to be able to pluck a few games. I think this is going 6 or 7. I do probably think the Heat win. I think being up 2-0 is huge, hard to come back from. I think that was a must win for the Celtics last night, and they weren't able to do it. So we'll see. But again, maybe I'm just blind and kind of looking at this how I was looking at the Raptors, and that I think they deserve more credit than these first 2 games really give them. But who knows? I mean, it sounds like after the game last night, there was some screaming going on with Marcus Smart in the locker room, but
I didn't agree with that at all.
I think it's
watching the end of that game, it was very clear to me that the Heat were going to win that game.
Yep.
The last 5 minutes of that game, I was very, very confident the Heat were going to win. And that's because just looking how the Heat were playing and how the Celtics were playing, the Celtics looked lazy. They didn't really care. And the Heat were out here grabbing every loose ball, and they were fighting for rebounds. And the Celtics were hey, we'll win maybe, and that's not how you go about these games. You really need to fight and claw, especially against a team like the Heat. One of the last plays, Jimmy Butler deflected a pass and then threw it back in bounds, and the Heat had a nice easy break for an easy bucket when the Celtics were up at 4 with 2 minutes to go.
Close, yeah.
And Kemba Walker was the only person on the Celtics to get back. No one else hustled back. And Marcus Smart wants to yell and cry about it in the locker room. He's not hustling back to get and play defense. When here's
the thing that I look at this for is that you have a predominantly younger team who, other than Marcus Smart and a couple of these guys, they went to the conference finals that time with Isaiah Thomas. They went to game 7 with LeBron. Not everyone has this experience in the playoffs. And I think Marcus Smart kind of has to be that voice, whether or not, fine, maybe on that last play he's not there, but who else is really going to be the one to hold everyone accountable and say, hey,
Kemba.
Kemba
Walker.
Kemba hasn't gotten past the first round.
It doesn't matter. He's a 30-year-old vet.
I also think there's just a difference.
He's hit big shots in his career before. I honestly think Kemba Walker should look Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and all these guys straight in the face and just be I want this more than you, and if you're not with it, I don't want to play with you. You better pick your stuff up.
So I think Kemba is just too nice of a person, is the understanding I get just from watching basketball all these years and, all these interviews, everything from him. I just don't think he is that guy. As dominant as he is, cardiac Kemba, he has hit some clutch shots, made some incredible plays down the stretch in games, throughout this playoff run, I don't think he is that voice. And like sooner or later, it's going to be Tatum. It's going to be Jaylen Brown. And I think that's why Jaylen Brown was butting heads with Marcus Smart. I just think that someone needs to get these guys fired up because they didn't have it in the second half of this last game. They just didn't. And so facilitating this conversation, even if it starts with a little friction, I think is exactly what the Celtics need. I do think they'll bounce back a little bit. Will they win? Probably not.
They just need fire. They need, if they want to beat this Heat team, they have to outplay this Heat. And if you think about the tone of the Heat set, you think about Jimmy Butler and the way he carries himself, and he, expects his teammates to carry themselves, you're gonna have to fight 48 minutes if you want to win a basketball game against the Heat. Yeah. And if the Celtics aren't willing to do that, they're gonna lose really quickly.
And that's why I think they should have taken a page out of the Bucks book, because the Bucks didn't put up that 48-minute fight. They just didn't. And so
they over and died, and you can't do that.
But that's why in the first game, it went into overtime, and the Celtics were going toe-to-toe. Then they go into the first half of game 2, and they're kicking the crap out of the Heat in the first half. Then the Heat switched to zone, which the Heat played zone more than any team in the league during the regular season. Did not play any at all in the playoffs until the second half. The Celtics looked lost. They just could not get anything done. And so they're going to need to have a solution for that. I think Brad Stevens is probably the most important in making that adjustment. But that being said, you need to attack that zone. Zone is easy to break down with their personnel.
On an NBA team, too.
Yes, exactly. With their shooters and the way they can line up around a 2-3 zone, they can absolutely exploit this.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they looked confused and just absolutely lost was, I think, an issue.
I think it has to do with, and I won't try to reiterate what you guys were saying, but I think that has to do with something you said, which was they're young. They've only been there a few times, if that. And I think the Heat, they're encountering a team that is just firing on all cylinders at the exact right time. We were young, but it's reminding me of the 2004 Pistons a little bit, where no one on that team besides probably Chauncey. I mean, Ben Wallace was a defensive player of the year, but it's just a bunch of dogs who are working well together and just peaking at the right time. They're really tough. And for a young team who has a bunch of personalities and a lot of people who can do a lot of great things when they have the ball, I think you encounter a team that's just balanced and not playing for one single person and kicking the crap out of you with their zone defense. I just think it's tough to beat this year. I think also for the Celtics, you need watching them throughout the postseason. I actually gained a lot of respect for them, which I didn't previously have. I always thought they were okay, but I think the Celtics don't need to do much. They need to add a big man of some substance, because I don't if you can manage it, do not touch Brown and Tatum and just let them grow. And I think you're going to wind up having the stars. You don't need to outsource stars at this point. You'll have them. It's just not now. And I think they're encountering a team that is just rocking right now. And that's what's happening.
All right. So let's look at the series.
Lastly, can I just say,
go for it.
Jaylen Brown has been really impressive to me.
Yeah.
This postseason. I always thought of him as like a 2-3 wing where he just kind of shoots and his handle was okay, but he's been doing a lot of great things, like pulling down hard rebounds and just like making impressive plays that I wouldn't really expect from him. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but we can move to the Western Conference.
I was going to say, before we get there though, it's 2-0 right now. Heat up on the Celtics. How do you think this ends? Who do you think goes to the finals? Luke?
I mean, I really want the Celtics to go to the finals just because I don't think the Heat, even with their bulldog mentality, will pose any type of threat to the Lakers. The Lakers will 100% go toe and nail 7 games with this Heat team. You think LeBron's going to lose?
No.
You think LeBron? No. And AD is the same type of way. AD will 100% get in there and fight Bam for every rebound.
Yeah.
So, like, the Lakers have a gritty team. The Heat have a gritty team. I would prefer to see the Celtics. All right. I want it to be the Celtics, so I'm going to say Celtics in 7.
Wow, okay. Michael?
I think I already said I think it's going to be the Heat in 5, which is so sad, but I just think it's not the Celtics' time yet. I think unless Jason Tatum can have like a prolific legacy building experience right now and bring them to the finals, but I think it'll be the Heat.
I think it's Heat in 7. I just think like they're up 2-0. The Celtics, again, I do think they bounce back, but I
hope it's Heat in 7 for my viewership, but
yeah, I mean that's kind of why I'm saying 7. My gut is telling me Heat in 6. But whatever. I want a little extra basketball, so hopefully it goes 7. Luke, since you're apparently now saying the Lakers are a lock to go to the finals here, let's switch to the Western Conference Finals. The first game tonight between the Lakers and the Nuggets. Lakers in 5. All right, so you're just already going out heat check with your take on who wins this series. But okay.
I really don't like. I think Murray and Jokic have been incredible.
They've been unbelievable. They've been unbelievable.
The Clippers series was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to talk about the fact that Jokic in that final game 7 had more rebounds than he did points. He also had like 12 or 13 assists.
Yeah.
And 3 blocks. He only scored like 16 points.
16 points, 22 rebounds, and I think 13 assists. Yeah.
Something like that, right? But he was still the most impactful player on the court.
And Murray went for
scoring. That's what I mean. But like, it's very important to realize that you don't need to score points to be the most impactful player in a game.
Yes.
I think it's very important to recognize that. I think it's very important for people to understand that. I'm someone who preaches like this team mentality where you can impact the game just by playing defense or just by standing on the court. You don't have to score. You don't have to do anything. You just have to play your role. And Jokic does that so perfectly, and he's been doing it so great, especially against the Clippers. This team is just firing on all cylinders because they all understand their role and they all played their roles perfectly.
So I think there's 2 things to factor in looking at the Lakers and the Nuggets, and I'm going to look at it through the lens of the Nuggets. 1, 2 back-to-back 7-game series that are very hard fought is exhausting. The Lakers have played 4 less games than them, and realistically, some of those games were not close. So they are well rested. They're experienced, whereas the Nuggets really aren't. And I think that just that drain on the Nuggets as a whole is going to be a factor should they need to beat the Lakers in an extended series. 2 is that the Lakers are realistically, and I think presumably, going to return to their bigger lineup where they have JaVale and Dwight playing bigger minutes they didn't have against the Rockets in order to account for Jokic. And I think that their combination of whoever they can throw at Jokic severely is more drastically able to contain him compared to what the Clippers were able to do. I think they have the personnel for it where you can put on Anthony Davis, JaVale, Dwight, even Kuzma if you had to and you wanted to go small because he's blowing by the other guys. Like you could accommodate there. You could put LeBron on him if you had to. Like they have so many different looks they could try to use to thwart him. I definitely don't think you double team him, which I think we all saw in Game 7 there. It's a mistake. But I think it's going to come down to what Murray can do. And while I agree with you, Jokic is the most impactful, and I think that is where the Lakers have to turn their attention. It's going to be a question of how much Murray can exploit these perimeter defenders for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, I think one need only look at the first round matchup for the Nuggets and see that when you have the bigs to take on Jokic, Gobert, I don't have the numbers in front of me for Jokic, but he wasn't the focal point of that series. It was Murray. Murray lifted them out of that series, but when there's a good big on Jokic, a physical one and also a quicker one, it makes it a little more interesting to see how the Nuggets respond to that. And I think obviously the Lakers, like you said, have the weapons for that.
I honestly think the Lakers are going to trap Murray up top. And because they're playing 2 bigs on the court at any given time with AD, Dwight, and JaVale, they'll just rotate.
Yeah.
The Clippers were getting killed because they were getting matched up on a Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams pick and roll. Neither of them are going to guard Jokic, and neither of them are going to guard Murray.
Right.
So, and they got torched. The Lakers aren't going to have that problem. And
no, they're not.
If you just take the ball out of Murray's hands and then make it difficult for Jokic to get his shots, I think it'll.
And I also think if you take this same outlook and look at how the Nuggets match up with the Lakers when the Lakers are on offense,
not good.
I presume that what you're going to do is you're going to stick Jokic or Millsap on Anthony Davis using that starting lineup. Probably one of them. I'd imagine maybe you go Millsap because he's a little quicker. But then you're going to put who on LeBron? Jeremy Grant. It's not the worst defender.
Jeremy Grant guarded Kawhi.
Right, exactly. That's why I think, as much as I'm giving the Lakers credit here for being able to shut down the Nuggets could conceivably contain these 2. Not that there is a containing these 2, but I don't think they're going to go for 50 in any of these games or even 45, 40.
They're going to have to, though. I think you're going to see a very big team contribution. I think LeBron and AD will probably score somewhere between 50 to 70 points for the Lakers combined.
Right.
So the way
get a couple from here and there.
The way I see it is that, to add to the point that you made that they're well rested, LeBron had a couple dominoes just fall for him that are so crucial. The two teams that he thought he was going to have to play, if he got to, they're gone. Thought he was going to have to play Battle LA. Like, thank God. He must be so thrilled that he's not playing them. And then if he gets past the Nuggets, he's not playing the Greek Freak. Like, everything is working out for him, which leads me to say this. To your point about him not being able to, or he and AD not putting up crazy numbers, I think he has to channel 2018 playoff LeBron and just go off. It does not matter. He needs to.
It doesn't matter if he goes off, but
8 games. He's not going to sweep both series, but 8. If he can just put it together for like 10 games.
I also can't believe I'm saying this. Rondo coming back is incredibly huge for the Lakers, because what they looked like in the first round. If Dame hadn't gotten hurt, that's not they would have lost. It's a different series. I don't think they go out like that. Rondo coming back in the second round, just what he was able to do defensively against the small ball Rockets, like it made up for their perimeter woes. And also, when LeBron leaves the court, he can facilitate the ball better than anyone else that the Lakers had. So it's big. And he's washed and it's Rondo, but like it's still big. Like, it is a big upgrade from what they did have going out there.
For sure.
I mean, he averaged like 15, 5, and then like a steal and a block.
Yeah, I mean, he was rusty when he came back.
Played really well.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, though, besides the fact that they do have LeBron and Anthony Davis is a beast, too, I find that the Lakers, in my opinion, are worse than the Clippers, interestingly enough. So, in terms of their depth, I think.
Depth-wise, 100%.
So that's what's so strange, and why I think if they're not careful, the Nuggets could punch them in the nose tonight and win game 1, and they're in 100%. So if I were the Lakers, I hope they are
but
prepared to really take this seriously, is the point.
I think I think that it's possible. Like, I think the Nuggets have shown that they are not scared of anyone. Like, they really are not, and they're going to come at you no matter what. And they have some dogs in that team. All things considered, I don't see them winning the series. Like, I do. I think this is going to be. What do
you think the series will be?
I think the series is Lakers in 6, only because, like, I think it's going to go Lakers win the first game, the Nuggets win the next 2, then just LeBron takes over. He's like, my back's against the wall, I'm not losing, and they win at 6. When
LeBron's this close to the finals, he's not going to lose.
I doubt it. And maybe we're just spoiled because every time we've seen him play in the playoffs, he's in the last decade, he's gone.
No, and I think, call me crazy, and I know we're at the end of the pod, so I don't want to stir the pot too much. Stir the pod, but I think this is his last ring if he gets it. I don't see it. They're going to try to run some Lakers team back next year, but think about how much better the West gets next year. I won't go down the rabbit hole, but he's got to win. I think this is his last chance for a ring.
I don't know about that,
unless he joins a contender when Bronny's in the league. But
the only all right. So let's go around here, just because as you said, we should probably wrap this up. But let's get some closing thoughts on this series or otherwise. Luke, so you said it's going to be Lakers in 5.
Yeah, it's going to be a terrible game 1 today. I think the Nuggets are tired and they're not going to play well. I think the Lakers have been losing their first games, and I think it's going to be like a really slow, a lot of fouling.
You're right. I think it's going to be
the Nuggets are going to grind one out for like a 104-97.
The
Lakers are going to next 4 are Lakers in 5.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't won game 1 of either series so far, so maybe.
I mean,
so you're giving the Lakers the gentleman's sweep. I think the Lakers are going to win in 6, and I think the series will be tied 2-2.
All right, that's fair.
I think at some point it will be tied 2-2, and it's going to be like, is LeBron done? Like, are the Nuggets like blah blah blah? And then he's going to win.
I can see Skip Bayless already.
LeBron. God,
I think this series there's definitely LeBron's washed potential, but they're going to rise to the occasion. I think we're going to see a few huge games out of Davis. Lakers in 6.
So I agree, Lakers in 6. The one thing I will say, and I kept the receipts, you guys left Jokic out of your top 10 players in the NBA. I want apologies now. He is proving he is a top 10 player in the NBA. If this run has not shown that, I don't know what does. But
I put him at 12.
You included Paul George. You included Embiid in your top 10. I don't want to hear it. He's a top 10 player.
I still think Embiid. Put Embiid on this Nuggets team.
And they're worse.
They're worse.
I
think
Jokic they are worse just because Jokic works so well. But
yeah,
I think if Embiid had the same type of supporting cast that works so perfectly with his play style, like what Jokic does, I think Embiid would be doing the same exact stuff.
That's a fair point.
Sounds like a front office.
It's a fair point, but I'm saying I kept the receipts, guys. Neither of you put him in the top 10, and he's playing honestly like an all-time center at this point. If he can keep this up his whole career, it's unbelievable.
I think I said.
So he'll be in my top 10 next year.
I'm the color commentary guy on the podcast. My takes are going to be wrong most of the time.
I mean, so are mine, but who cares?
I don't think any of us are that smart.
No. But all right. So now that we've kind of forecasted our conference finals previews here, looked at everything that's happened in the playoffs to date, want to thank everyone for joining us here for the latest episode of the Hoop Troop podcast. We look forward to having you guys join us again next time. When I guess what will we discuss now that I think about it? But whatever.
The draft.
The champion.
Probably, yeah, the champion. Maybe we'll do a little finals preview if we're feeling it. Otherwise,
Jimmy Butler's the GOAT. I can't believe he beat LeBron.
Yeah, see, you might be hearing that. I doubt it.
A walkthrough of my unboxing of my new Jimmy Butler jersey that I'm going to have.
Yeah, fair. But all right, so thanks everyone for joining and hope to have you with us next time.